All right, today I'm excited to welcome Dale Kershner to the show. Dale, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, and I'm honored to be on the show. Thank you.
Awesome. We were talking before the show and you were like, it's another sunny day in Southern California. And I was like, oh, shocker. It
Yeah,
must be
yeah,
tough. Dale, on the show, we like to talk about people's journeys to get to where they're at, their twists, their turns, ups and downs. But to talk about the journey, I think we need to know who you are. If you could introduce yourself to the audience, who you are now, what you got going on, and then we'll kind of talk about how you got there.
sounds good. So Dale Kershner. Um, let's see. I'm a 70-year-old business slash human being coach. Been doing that for 43 plus years,
Oh, nice.
um, all over the planet and in 1,000 different ways. But yeah, it's I've discovered it to be the passion of my existence. So people talk to me about retiring, and I said, well, this is retirement. I'm doing precisely what I want to do when I want to do it. So I'm retired.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you can enjoy it every day and it's fulfilling to you, even better. You're
Right.
not just sitting there watching old Murder She Wrote reruns and
Right.
wasting away.
Yeah. No.
Uh, you mentioned business coach, small entrepreneur coach, but human being coach, and when you said that, I was like, man, don't we need a coach? Everybody thinks they can do it themselves, and we have all this natural instinct, but man, don't we? Don't we all?
I I have always contended, and I don't know if it sounds a little self-serving, I suppose, but I've always contended that every human being on the planet could use, doesn't need, but could use a coach. I have a coach, and
even
I've been
even
doing
just it can be as easy as a spouse, but I think we all need someone. We need outside eyes to call us on our bullshit, to point out our bullshit, and just you don't know what you don't know.
spouses make incredibly bad coaches, right? And I don't coach my spouse. I've specifically told him that's off base. We don't do that. But yeah, I think the emotional connection clouds everything else, and you can't just listen non-judgmentally. And that's, I think, the biggest value of a coach.
All right. Well, the cost of the podcast just paid for itself. So,
Oh, there you go.
anyway, let's go back a ways and see how you got to this fulfilling 70-year-old career.
Right?
When you were a kid, what was childhood like? Did you want to be a coach? Did you just want to help people when you were a kid? I mean, that actually seems like a pretty common thread for kids. They always like to help.
Right. That was there. The wanting to change the world, wanting to save the world was a core concept. The term or the idea of coach hadn't even been invented back then. you
Right.
know so so I actually finished high school, went to college, started law school,
Okay.
and I was sitting like in my second week in law school, and they were talking about how half of us were going to wash out, and all of that. And I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I said, wait a second, if I finish law school, I need to be a lawyer, and I hate the thought of just doing one thing my whole life. So I stood up and I said, okay, I'm first, and I left. And
Nice.
then and then I came to the quick conclusion that whatever I was going to do, and I had no idea what it was, had to be something different and new and challenging every single day. And I couldn't figure out what that was. I went to work for a robotic cutting machine company and programmed their robotic device, and then quickly.
So you just chose law school? You were just like, let's give this a try.
Well, let's see. My mother was encouraging me to do something professional and something that would generate enough revenue, and that seemed like a logical choice. So yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was good that you realized it right there up front that, not like 3 years in and you're like, "Oh god, I gotta be a lawyer."
Right, right. Because after that commitment, after that level of, education, what do you gotta do it. So,
Right, right.
yeah, and I would have
So
been
you
miserable today.
so you started programming robotics, and this has
Yep,
gotta be in, like, I'm trying to do the math. Are we in the 70s?
1981.
1981, okay, okay.
Yeah, so robotics was a new thing,
Mhm.
and, the machine, was a 40-foot long machine that cut out half-inch plates of steel. So it was fun and challenging and interesting, um, but quickly I wrote a program that let just the mechanics in the shop do whatever they wanted to on the machine, so I was no longer necessary. I moved into designing fire detection systems for lumber mills at that same company, and so I did that, and I kind of canned the design process, so now anybody could do that. I started networking microcomputers together so that they could do accounting systems for the companies, and got into, okay, what's the ins and outs of how a company runs and all that.
You
And
weren't lying when you said you didn't wanna do the same thing.
not at all,
That's
not at all.
fantastic, and this was all with the same company. You were able to have
Exactly.
the latitude to do different projects like that.
Yep.
That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was nice that they let me do that. Now, when they stopped letting me was when I came to them and said, hey, one of the lumber mills wants me to do a network computer system for them, and they're going to pay me $250,000 to do it. And I work for you, so I want to do that through you guys. And they thought about it for a while, and the owners go, "Yeah, we don't do that. We cut out steel and work in lumber mills, and that's what we do." And I said, "I understand." I quit, and I took the project.
Right.
And I went and did the project, and I overpriced it by probably double because nobody had ever done these things before.
So
And
you're integrating every aspect of, and we're talking sawmill as in processing rough cut trees into lumber. Um,
yes,
so you're connecting everything from the saws to the office to the accounting to the sales.
that came later. At this point, that level of automation had not even been conceived of. So what I did initially was just put a bunch of IBM PCs
Okay.
put together by serial ports in their business office to run their accounting systems.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
That was it. And then after I did that one, they handed me to another lumber company. I did that one, and then ended up.
I gotta think that's like a thing that you don't mind your competitor doing, or your networking person's like, hey, this guy did a great job for us. It's not like it's giving them a competitive advantage in the lumber business. I
Right,
mean, in the business end it is, but
right.
that's awesome. That like you could have wrote your ticket right there, I imagine.
I did write my ticket. The it was less that you didn't mind somebody else having the same level of automation. It was that nobody was doing it.
Oh,
And so it's like, hey, well, what are those things on your desks? And oh, those are computers, and this is what we're doing with them. Oh, who did that? Oh, here, you should talk to Dale.
I'm picturing this time in my life. I'm 47, so I was born in the late 70s. So I remember, like, as a kid, there were
Yeah.
lots of places that didn't have a computer,
Oh,
really?
oh,
Um,
right.
so,
Yeah.
uh, right place, right time, man.
It really was. Um, from there, what did it? Oh, this company in Seattle came across me somehow by people who knew people who knew people, and um, and they wanted me to do the same thing for their company, but they were a subsidiary of a Japanese multinational. So they hired me to do the same thing. I did that for them. Then they flew me to Japan, and I did it for the Japanese parent company. Then they handed me to a company in China, and they handed me to a company in the Philippines, and then Central America. And so I just
Did you
started.
know did you know this was gonna happen when you did the first one?
I had no concept at all. I
Oh,
knew that someone was going to pay me $250,000, which was twice what I thought it should cost for that, to do something. I didn't care what I've never taken a job that I was qualified for, ever.
right.
You know, so I read the manuals on how to do it the night before. I took all the equipment up and went to do it. So no, I had no concept that this was going to be an explosion. That microcomputers were the way the world was headed, but it kind of worked
Wow.
out.
I would say. I would
Yeah,
say. Um, how long did you continue to do this?
somewhere in it was China. It shifted from doing the doing of the computers and so forth to talking to the human beings. All along the line, I had contracts with everybody I put the systems in with to support them because nobody knew how to use the things. So they needed to be able to reach me by phone. This is before cell phones and stuff. Um, so I had contracts so they could reach out to me and I could walk them through. For instance, you don't use the little circle thing on the front of the computer to put your coffee in. That's a CD reader. Um, you know, I remember one time saying, okay, so what's the screen look like? She said, well, it's completely black. I don't know what to do. And I said, okay, take your right hand, run it down the right hand side of the box, the steel box. Now, see that red flip thing in the very back? And she said, yeah. I said, okay, flip it up. She goes, okay, now what? I said, wait a minute. I said, did a little green box show up on your screen? She said, yeah. I said, okay, you just turned on your computer. That's what you needed to do.
Yeah. I have a lot of IT friends, and they're like, the jokes online aren't they're not jokes. Like, they're
Ah,
funny, but
yeah.
it's really sad because they're true.
Right, right,
And yeah.
and you're starting from 0, so, it's, I remember programming DOS to come up with rude error messages because that was fun to do.
Right. Right. Yeah, my mom used to bring home the Apple IIe when I was growing up. So she was a elementary teacher, and they had one in the classroom.
Sure,
And on break, she would bring it home for if there was a long weekend or something. And I
sure.
remember playing all the games and doing like small programming. And man,
Yep,
it was fun. Like, I
right.
wish I had continued with it. And now I look at the world today, and I'm like, wow, you were dumb.
Yeah, or there was an opportunity, just didn't take it, that's all.
Right. So
Yeah.
you started to have to service the contracts more. Did that become a full-time job?
What happened was in China, I already had the support contract, so I was interacting with their office staff all the time. And I must have sounded knowledgeable. So the CEO came to me one time. He said, "Look, I got this concept, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to take it on." I said, "Well, what?" He said, "We just sent 17 of our C levels through MBA school in the United States because we're branching into the United States pretty dramatically." He said, "Now they know what they need to know about business administration. What they suck at is how to interact with people, especially how to culturally interact with people in the United States versus here. Could you teach them how to be human beings?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure. No, I do that all the time." Of course, having never done it before. So,
I
so
mean,
I,
you've been a human being your whole life.
well, yeah, yeah. So I was familiar with the concept at least,
I
but
mean, that's definitely got to be a challenge as companies expand to different cultures. I mean, even within the United States or within different demographics in the United States, it can be a challenge. I can only imagine coming from a totally different country and culture.
and it is the one of the things I learned early on is that everybody's different, and and that is universal. The differences are what are unique as you move across cultures or locales or regions or whatever. So yeah, it was challenging, a little bit of a language issue some of the times too. I'd use, and that's when I learned to stop using slang terms in my coaching, because Chinese nationals don't understand slang in American language.
Right.
So
Is it
there,
a lot of teaching people to understand the other person, like be willing to get to know them, basically? I've heard it taught in sales techniques, you get to know your customer and that. Is it kind of the same relationship there?
early on, I discovered that there's some stuff that human beings mostly don't know, and they don't know that they don't know those things. So my approach to them was for them to understand that nobody would ever hear what they intended for them to hear, and nobody would ever say what they intended to convey. That it was all filtered information coming from their backgrounds and their history and their childhood and all that. And so
Dude,
if
that's
you
pretty profound. Just
well,
thinking about that.
right, but if you start there, then you get to throw away an awful lot of the preconceived notions and your own stuff, and you can hear people a brand new way, and in a distinct, deep method, such that okay, you don't automatically make up preconceived notions, you don't have prejudices walking into it in the same way, and you start to listen in a brand new fashion and speak a whole new way. So that's
Right.
where we started. That's where it all started.
So this was kind of your launch into human coaching.
It was.
Um, which did you like better? Did you like the programming and the original job, or did you like the new transition?
It was fun to do the original job because it was brand new, fresh, and nobody. Yeah, I remember calling tech support every once in a while and then trying to train the tech support person in how to do the thing correctly, because nobody in tech support understood the machines.
Right.
Um, right. But after a while, very short while, that got boring because it was the same thing. And yeah, the technology was changing rapidly, but it was still plugging machines together, getting them to talk to each other, and so forth.
It wasn't changing enough.
Not for me. And I noticed that there was a burn, there was a flame ignited inside me working with human beings, and that it was, no matter who it was, every 30 minutes it was different. It was a new human. They had different stuff. They carried different baggage. There was more things, more and different things to break through. And yeah,
Even within the same person.
oh, totally, on a given day or 15 minutes later.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, that's a constant, and that challenges your skills too. And yeah, you seem to be the type that likes a challenge. That's like a minute to minute challenge.
it is. Plus, I I took it on early that it was my job was to make sure that I had the most substantial and inspirational impact on a person in every conversation I had, whether they were a client or not. I would go to Starbucks when it finally started, and I would make sure that the barista was left impacted before I left and had my coffee. It just I don't know, became a game I played for myself.
Man, I so over the last few years, I've really adopted a value for value
Hmm.
proposition. It came out of Bitcoin, studying Bitcoin and things like that, and proof of work, and it seems similar. Like, give it away before you ever even suspect to get it back.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But you see, the giving it away is getting it back. The greatest satisfaction of my existence is hearing over there in the other person that something I said or did had the impact on them that changed their life forever.
And you never, the beautiful part is you never even know.
Right.
You
Right.
don't know.
What do they become or where do they go? I could track success. Most of my clients stay with me for some number of years. I've been running the average recently, and it's probably about 3 years. And I get to track some stuff through there, but it's equal parts of frustration that they're not moving fast enough for me, even though they get to go at their own pace, and satisfaction in they've become this completely new human being as a virtue of the work that we're doing together.
The work yourself out of a job, like you're well on your way, and I just don't know if I'm helping you in this aspect anymore.
I have a client who's been with me for 13 years. And I have told that client any quantity of times, look, you have heard now pretty much everything I have to say, right? Now,
Right.
whether or not it's registered, whether or not you've taken it on, that's a question. But you've heard everything I had to say. So it doesn't matter. My life works when I'm working with you. It doesn't work when I'm not working with you. I want to keep working with you. That's it.
I mean, there isn't a better recommendation than that, I don't think.
I don't either.
So you started working with groups of corporate, helping them integrate into the US. Is that kind of the path it just stayed on for a while?
For a little bit, it went from coaching MBAs to coaching owners and developers of companies, and showing them better pathways, which led to better communication structures for the employees, training middle management. Started a couple of my own companies, then helped a couple of hundred companies start and flourish.
What kind of companies did you start? Like I'm trying to guess, like, so you're coaching human beings, and you gotta be like a baseball card shop or something, right?
Wouldn't you think? The first company was a wholesale computer equipment company back when you could make money doing that. What was the next one? Oh, the next one fell into my lap because I was helping a guy save his company from bankruptcy. He ended up giving me the company. So it was a classic rail car restoration company. So we would take in 1800s rail cars and fix them up and then resell them. So that was a bit of a departure and fun because it was different.
Right.
Yeah, there was. God, there's been so many. It's hard to put my fingers on them. Oh,
Was there a favorite out of your whole 7 years? Because we're kind of pushing up to where we'll wrap up in a little bit.
sure.
Out of the whole 7 years, was there a favorite business that you had? Maybe it wasn't even successful. That you were just like, yes.
I think the most interesting, because it was the most challenging, was more recently. I've had two cannabis related companies.
Okay.
One was an extract company, and one was just a flower company, growing and wholesale selling flower. One went on to be very successful. The other completely tanked, which was a result of the narcissism of the guy who was managing it,
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
which is a
Um,
great lesson in narcissism.
um, so right now, so we're gonna fast forward back
Sure.
to where we are now.
Yep.
What do you got going on now? What are you? Who can benefit from looking into you more? Plug your stuff, where people can find you,
Sure.
and then we'll start to wrap up.
Okay. So, who I'm focusing on right now, I think, is the alphabet generations. I have come to the conclusion that there's a whole challenge out there in the world being in those generations right now. You've inherited a world that's not very fun. There's a lot of fear, and there's not a ready access to joy and happiness and self-fulfillment. So I really am focusing on that type of client as an individual, and or entrepreneurs launching or mid-launch, or part of the way down the road, whatever it is, to make their businesses better. The best way to reach out to me, if any of this has sounded interesting, is my website, dalekershner.com. I'm sure the spelling will be on the podcast or whatever.
Yep.
And there you can just book a 30-minute free coaching call with me, anybody. And no strings attached. I'm not going to spend the entire time selling you. I'm going to coach you for 30 minutes, make your life a better thing. And at the end, you can decide whether or not you want to do more of that.
Perfect. I mean, there's no better way to do it. Like, yeah, awesome. I would definitely have your website link. I think you have a couple of socials listed over on Podmatch. I can put them out there. I definitely encourage people to look into what you got going on. The story fascinated me, and I think it's gonna to click with a lot of the listeners. So I appreciate you being here. I definitely want to catch up with you soon, and maybe we'll come back and chat a little longer next time. But Dale, thanks for being here, and make it a great day, man.
You too. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity.